Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of my interview series. Today, I have Linda and Ching from Red Ant Asia. They both have a huge amount of knowledge and experience with the Chinese market and bringing international brands to the market from a marketing perspective. They work with an impressive client list from Charlotte Tilbury, Supergroup, Hourglass, Creed, and many more brands, both in beauty and in other categories. The thing that I really wanted to talk to them today about is about naming. So Linda and Ching, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Ailey.
Yeah, pleasure.
So naming for Chinese names for foreign brands is something that I'm personally very much in favor of. And I always talk to my clients about how important it is, but not all brands choose this path when they come into China. So I thought it would be great to, first of all, ask you, why does a foreign brand need a Chinese name?
Okay, so to answer this question, because there are a number of reasons, but first and foremost, let's get back to the linguistic roots. Let's see, like Chinese language, this is like belongs to the Sino-Tibetan family, and this system is different, like very, very different from the Germanic or Latin system. So Chinese people, they are very limited in acquiring information that, you know, most Western brands carry. That's why we see, plus there's a global trend, you know, like Western brands now, they also play, when they do naming, they play with words and maybe invent new words. So this makes it even more complicated. So as marketers, sometimes we don't even know how to pronounce or understand a word when we first launch the brand, not let alone, you know, normal consumers. So that's an obstacle for them to get to know the brand. That's I think the most important reason.
Yeah, the pronunciation and also the memory recall, right? Like for consumers to be able to remember what the brand's called so they can go back and search for it, or they can tell their friends about it. Yeah, and I think that's something that I've seen. Also, for example, when you look at Taobao searches, and you can see that for most brands that have a Chinese name, the search volumes on Taobao under the Chinese name are much, much larger than what the English names are. So that's obviously people, as you said, people feel much more comfortable if they have
That's also related to the second point that I want to mention is the market is so competitive these days with thousands of imported brands launching in China every year. So brands really need to stand out loud and clear. So with memorable and unique names, that saves tons of marketing budgets. I think with a Chinese name ready, brands are arms open, you know, to all audience. So no matter age, gender, or education backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important. Very important.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you think are some key considerations for you when you're helping brands come up with Chinese names? What are the main things that you sort of focus on?
I will let Ching answer this question.
We would take our starting point always from what the brand want to express in this Chinese names. So most directly would be what is expressed in this English name. Do we want to enhance, reinforce some of the message within? But also sometimes including the product features, how it's developed, the company values, that is something that stand out in the Chinese market, that differentiated from competitor brands. Most of the Chinese names, we would imagine most of the Chinese, they would be used together or in supplement with its English names. But also sometimes if the pronunciation or the spelling of the foreign names is rather complicated, the Chinese name would be designed in a way to take the major place for the consumers to understand a brand. So that's like the situations of usage, how we expect it to be placed in the market. It's also an important factor that we need to take in when creating these Chinese names. So what we would do is to list out a few the priorities, like how we want to play these Chinese names, how to have it reflect or imply the meanings from those wordings. And in the then, like when we are kind of like testing, practicing the creation of the names, what we really would take into consideration is the tone, like how we express from this language. This is related to the target audience in China, like how we speak, how we connect to them. It's something that when we are like constituting the Chinese words, how it's perceived by the target audiences that will that will attend to this name. So that would be a process that we explore the names from different approaches. So like when we look at these border questions, we wouldn't define which approach that we go ahead. It could be phonetic, semantic, or from the contextual meanings of the brand. But it would be the two main considerations that we're starting from when creating these names.
Yeah, I think there are like a couple of really important points in there. First, that you said about how the Chinese name is used in conjunction with the brand's own Western name, because I think that's something that brands get a bit worried about. They're like, okay, in China, I'm just going to be known by my Chinese name, but it's not the case at all. It's about putting them side by side each other. It's really, to your point at the beginning, Linda, it's just helping consumers recognize the brand. So it helps maximize marketing dollars, helps all that, just sort of smooths things along in terms of search and discovery. So I think that's a really important point for brands to realize, that it's not taking over your normal global name. It's just in conjunction. And then a couple of things there that you pointed out about your different ways of approaches to it. So you've obviously got remind me again, the three approaches that you use.
Phonetic is like the pronunciation of the names is really close in between the English and Chinese, or it could be semantic. It's like from the meanings that is expressed in the foreign names, how it's translated into the Chinese ways. And we would also take into other considerations like the company values or how the product is different from the others' approach. So that would be the contextual of the brand, how it stands in the market. But it wouldn't be like a one-way approach for each name. It could be a mixed play. And also because Chinese name is just, let's say, 2 to 4 characters. So like what we are trying to do is to kind of like adding different perspectives that consumers could see through the lens of those few characters in Chinese, and to get a more tangible imaginations of the brand they're going to explore.
Yeah, and that is something that's so amazing with the Chinese language, because each character can be packed full of so much meaning, and then a character in conjunction with another character can mean something different again. So I think that's, you know, in a way you can get much more meaning about the brand from 2 or 3 characters in Chinese that anyone, even a native English speaker, can get from an English name, right? Like you just, so I think that's an amazing piece of when we've done projects on it together. It's such an interesting process to see what you can pack into a couple of characters.
Yeah, exactly. It's the magic of the language, but sometimes it also, there's a good side and a bad side of it. For example, when we do like when the perceptions of a name could be very different when you ask different peoples. And it's really common because the language, like as you said, each characters, it could have different meanings, multiple meanings behind it when it works with different names, goes together with other words. So I would say there wouldn't be a perfect name that everyone loves it when they first see it. It's just like how strong the message we want to pack into those names. And it's also like when we want to create names that have a longer lifespan. For like it could be something that when the consumers get to experience the product, they gradually feel it's a great fit. The name is a good fit to it, and it helps them to build a long-term good impression on the brand.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So apart from people's feedback maybe differing when you sort of test out the names, what are some other big, or not big, but some other problems that you run into when you're doing these names?
Well, that's a question related to what Ching just introduced. You know, there are different approaches to the naming process, right? Phonetic, semantic, and contextual, etc. So I think the initial thinking in light with your marketing strategy, your China strategy is really key. That initial thinking process, you can't really skip that part and go directly into naming. So some brands, they just simply ask for as many names as possible, and so we ended up going back and forth, revising and revising, and duplicating work. So I think the thinking, the logic, is something we need to brainstorm with the brands, during the process. And also, brands need to understand coming up with good name is just first step. Actually, naming process is a dynamic changing process. So with I think the business and trademark registration, that process, that is
back and forth.
Yeah, that's very it's like you have a good name, maybe you didn't register today, someone else did it, then you have nothing. So it's really a process you need to get super prepared. You need to have really a long list of names, and you need to have your preferences, and you rank them, and you go check one by one, and just don't always think you are the lucky one who always have your favorite name in the end. And it's a process of compromising.
Yeah, and that that's a process that you do for the brands as well, checking whether the name is taken or not before. That's part of the process, and I know it can be very disheartening when things are taken, but that's why trademarking is so important, and doing it quickly once you and I guess that's also to your point about doing it with a strategy. So not just doing the name on its own, making sure that you have that strategic perspective for China, but at the same time, not waiting too long since you've been in the market too long. Yeah. I think as you're introducing yourself to the market, you have a strategy, you have a market entry strategy, and at the same time, you create that name. I think that's all part of the process. So why do you think some brands go in and they don't have Chinese names, and they don't create Chinese names? What's behind that?
Well, I'm sure there are different scenarios. So take Charlotte Tilbury, for example. I feel like the name itself is a complete person's name. A Chinese name by large chance would be phonetic translation of that name. So in essence, it's not difficult to do. And it's not that urgent, because people understand this is a person's name, and this is a cosmetic expert or someone important. So they understand, even though they probably can't pronounce it. And as long as you have enough UGC or social content to promote a simplified version of it, like CT, so you are fine. But I think it's natural for brands to have a Chinese name when their business enters a rapidly growing stage. So they have their different thinkings behind this. But for niche newcomers, they probably can't, really feel the difference with or without a Chinese name, because the business volume is low, so they can't really tell if this works or not. So they don't see it as urgent.
Yeah, I think the Charlotte Tilbury example is an interesting one. And as you said, yes, you could have created a phonetic Chinese name for her, but at the same time, I can completely see why that wasn't the path that was chosen. And with her, the sort of nickname of CT is something that is everywhere, right? Like when you look at Chinese channels, that's what Chinese people call the brand. And so that works very nicely in that case. But I think there are lots of other examples of brands that have more technical names, or just not a person's name, that haven't done this process in China. And to your point about, a niche brand not feeling the difference. Yes, of course, because you can't do an A/B testing on this, right? Like you either have one or you don't have one. So I feel like from my perspective, it's something that brands should absolutely have. And if they go through the process, they get it, they get the name, they use it, and then they find that actually their English name is easier to pronounce or easier for people to remember than they thought, then that gets picked up and used more. But at least you have it, because there are millions and hundreds of millions of people that don't speak English, will never speak English, and will still be your target audience for your product. So I think I think that's something that brands should really look at. And in terms of the stage of which brand, we've talked about this a little bit in terms of how early they should do it. Do you think it's a pre-market entry thing, or once they're already here in the market? What's your feeling on that?
Nowadays, we observed more and more brands, when they start to enter in the market, they get them prepared with the Chinese name. I think that is really smart, because when you get an official Chinese names in all the occasions that that the brand have presence, you can have it presented with the English name. So to have creating a visual expression that this brand is officially entering, it's prepared to the market, especially when unless the brand is taking almost like a testing stage at the market. Otherwise, I think having a Chinese name is always helpful in this market boost.
Yeah. Okay. And so what are some examples of Chinese names that you love, of foreign brands that you think really work very well?
I'd like to name some of the Chinese brand names that when we discuss it comes to our mind earlier than the English names. So I would say that that's a way that we would consider that name is pretty successful. Some classic examples would be Lamette's Chinese name, 海蓝之谜. So it's it adds a level of meanings to its English Chinese. It actually means the mystery
of the sea.
Of the
blue
sea. So it's connected to how the brand presented to the Chinese consumers, and it had the depth of a luxury skincare brand that want to carry. At the same time, the expression is poetic, it's beautiful, but at the same time, it's very easy, it's very readable. Everyone can quickly get it. A similar example would be Claire de Pep. Like it actually has a nickname is CPB. Sorry, it's Claire de Pep Beauty. And its official Chinese name is 肌肤之药. So it's the key to skin, to beautiful skin. So it's reflected the meanings in its French name. At the same time, it's expressed in this direct yet poetic ways. Those two names, those two Chinese words are consisted in a similar way that capture the essence of Chinese names. At the same time, it reflected the meanings that want to be expressed in the English name. They're all 4 character names. From the semantic and contextual mixing approaches from those 2 names. The other names that we constantly remember is Oshudan, Losidan. Yeah, that's also a great name. And skin centicle is called Xiulike. Yeah, Xiulike. So those names, it's more phonetically connected in its English names. But at the same time, it has different meanings. The characters carry different meanings into it. For example, Losidan is called Oshudan. So O means Europe. So it kind of express the origin of the brand, but in a broader ways. And it has this relaxing, soothing, this kind of meanings behind those characters. Xiulike just feels like it's a brand that's regenerate your skin. It's very effective in its beauty efficacy, and it's all like implications from those Chinese characters, and that reflect perfectly in how the product stands out in the market.
Yes, it's so important when you can get that balance between the personality and the meaning of the brand across through those characters. And also it's interesting the ones that can pull it off with phonetic as well, like having that phonetic link. It's definitely not always the case, as with La Mer, it's not the case, but yes, that helps in a way a little bit for consumers if they can have some sort of phonetic link, I think.
Yeah, it's those names are like naming is a process of creation, so there's no like one way answer to why those names works, but they turns out to be great names that fits the brand and its original English names. They are connected very well, those names that I just mentioned are like has enriching meanings into those words, but there are also some names that take a more like a direct route, also works really well, because each namings that I would say the topic itself, the English name is different, so we need to find ways that is the best fit to the topics that we want to, the names that we want to give. For example, Aesop. Aesop is from Aesop's fable. It's the same word, and the English Chinese name is Yisu. So it's exactly Aesop's Chinese name. Exactly those 2 characters. It works well. It's perfect. It's just sometimes the most direct, easiest route is the best one, and they just take it. It works perfectly. And another name that we noticed is from a young clean beauty brand called First Aid Beauty. It's called 急救美人, and that's also a great name. So it fits the brand image and it's reflect perfectly to its English meanings. Very well connected, so it's a cohesive creation of Chinese, and we found all those names are just so readable, and you get it in first sight.
It's definitely an art putting together these names. I've seen you guys do it. It's not easy. It's not easy, and but I think I you know, as we've said, I think it's something that is very important for brands as they're entering the market to really consider. So I guess on the final note, are there some trends that you've seen around naming or in general that you wanted to share as a sort of end note?
Well, first of all, I noticed more and more bold approach these years, because like in the past, like when we introduce Western brands, like imported brands, it's always like at first sight, you know, it's imported. It's a foreign brand because it has a very exotic kind of feeling. Like Tom, you translate as Tom
Ford, is it?
Tom Ford. Tom Ford is actually, its Chinese name is Tom Fute. So, but nowadays, like you see more and more foreign brands with a very, how to say, like universal name. Like it stands in Chinese too. So at first sight, you don't even notice it's a foreign brand, and it's poetic in Chinese. I think this is a great sign of the, the level of marketing, has improved over the years. This is something I noticed.
Yeah, I really agree with what Linda just said. I think on the side note, I would like to mention actually some of the brand China, the local brands that's in blooming ones, they also have beautiful Chinese names. They have an English name attached to it, but its Chinese name is really powerful. So the trend that foreign brands, they kind of have universal names, also shown that the consumers, we are open to different brands from different background, and that we're paying more attention to the stories that wants to be expressed by the brand in those names. That's why I think how exotic the name itself feels is not the most important considerations that we put in naming them. It's more about it's a concise reflect of the brand story, and we, like when we create the names, we also go deeper into the language to see whether there are different ways that it could come out and makes the brand more appealing in the market. It's a market including foreign brands and local brands.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and it links to the general trend in the market of the power of local brands, the consumers changing sentiment. They're moving not away from foreign brands, still wanting foreign brands, but not only foreign brands, or not just foreign brands because they're foreign, right? It's much more about wanting a brand because it's great and the product's fantastic. It happens to be foreign or it happens to be Chinese. It's sort of choosing what's best. And so that distinction of needing to be obviously foreign from your name is completely unnecessary now. And as I think, as you said, the most important thing is the meaning of the brand coming through, so people can really understand what your brand is about. Because in such a crowded market, where marketing is more and more expensive every time we talk, it's something that, if you can get across your core values or part of your core values through a name, I mean, you're already got a long way there. So all right, well, thank you both so much. What a great discussion, and I hope it's going to help some brands decide that naming is one of the things that you should do as you go into China, not as an afterthought. It's very important. So Linda, Ching, thank you so much.
Happy to chat.
Thank you. It's a great discussion. Thank you.